Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for November 29th, 2017. On today's show, we're going to be diving into a bunch of news, including the possible end for Star Wars the Skywalker Saga, HBO showing airplane edits of movies on their premium network, Disney is back in talks to buy Fox, the real accusations against John Lasseter are beginning to come to light, and in our feature presentation, Hoai-Tran Bui is going to join us with a reaction and a geeky analysis of the Avengers Infinity War trailer. So that's something you can look forward to after we get through with the news. This is Peter Sciretta, and on today's podcast is Slash Film writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
And we have a special guest on today's podcast, everyone. It is Sabina Graves from Superhero News.
Hey, everyone.
So Sabina, we know you because we encounter you weekly in LA at the junkets and at the screenings. But tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background in film fandom.
Okay, yeah. I am a pop culture commentator and critic on sites like Superhero News, their YouTube, and other like movie nerdy places like Coming Soon and Movie Phone. I freelance for a bunch of places all over.
Saying is we have read your work online somewhere.
Yes.
Yes.
No, definitely anything related to like superheroes or Disney. I know you and I totally geek out over Disney movie and theme park things all of the time.
Yes, and we've waited in many lines for Star Wars goodness at conventions and stuff. But speaking of Star Wars, let's jump into the news. There's a bunch of Star Wars news today. One of the bits is a kind of a bit of surprise that Star Wars Episode 9 will likely be the end of the Skywalker saga. Ben, what do we know?
Yes, so Rolling Stone published a lengthy profile today on The Last Jedi. And in this piece, it says that not only is the current trilogy going to come to an end with J.J. Abrams' Episode 9, but also Abrams himself says that could mark the end of the Skywalker saga as a whole. And his exact quote was, "I do see it that way, but the future is in flux." So there's still obviously a little bit of room left for them to sort of change their minds or go in a different direction. But it's telling that is where Abrams' mind is right now. And that's the, at this stage when he's prepping Episode 9, getting ready to write the script and all that stuff, that's what he's thinking about. He's looking at this as like a definitive end to the entire Skywalker story. And to me, it sort of makes sense because George Lucas obviously originally had like this 9-film vision in mind, so that would sort of bring that full circle. And then also with the passing of Carrie Fisher relatively recently, and the death of Harrison Ford's Han Solo character in the previous movie, there's not really much left for the legacy characters, I guess, to do. So unless there is a big reveal that one of the new characters like Daisy Ridley's Rey or something is actually a Skywalker, it would sort of make sense to close off that particular part of the story and move off into other adventures in a galaxy far, far away.
Well, spoiler alert for The Force Awakens, but Kylo Ren is a Skywalker-blooded person, so it could go on with just him alone, and even if Rey wasn't of that bloodline necessarily. But this seems really weird to me because, Kathleen Kennedy did interviews around Force Awakens saying that, they were going to continue to do kind of Skywalker saga films. And even, I think a month ago, she was talking about how they were having discussions about having future films with Rey, Poe, BB-8. Sabina, do you think that they're actually going to end these films with these characters at Episode 9?
I really wouldn't be surprised if they moved away from the legacy characters. It kind of makes sense. A lot of the complaints I've seen online about sort of Episode 7 has been the handling of legacy characters, or even sort of the fatigue of revisiting things in Rogue One and with the Han Solo story. But I would also point out that one of the strengths of Episode 7 is that they introduced so many new characters that instantly became iconic and endearing, like Poe, Finn, Phasma and Rey that, like, and then coming up with the new films with Rose and even, I would say, Porgs. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of went into a direction that was like, you know what, we know this universe is so vast and we're going to tell stories that have these engaging characters and may even introduce new people and places to go. Because, I mean, it's Star Wars. We've been in this storyline for so long that, it might be time to just move on.
I don't know, guys. I think that, like, maybe they're going to take a break. It seems like Daisy Ridley wants to do other films, and some of the other actors want to do other stuff. But I just think that we're going to have to come back to this. I want other stories in this galaxy, and it looks like we're getting that with this Rian Johnson trilogy that's being planned. But I don't know. I just can't see this being the definitive end of everything. And even if it is planned as that, Disney wants money. And
yeah.
Moving on. HBO is apparently showing neutered airplane edits of some of their movies, and filmmakers are unsurprisingly not happy about this.
I saw Robert Vought's tweet about this.
Yeah. Chris, what do we know about this?
The director of Kong Skull Island noticed that the version of Kong Skull Island being shown on HBO right now is apparently the airplane edit. And for those who don't know, airplane edits they're often in the wrong aspect ratio. Sometimes they remove scenes, stuff like that. So apparently that's the version being shown on HBO right now, and he called them out on it. And then Peter Tassino, who directed Keanu, commented and said the same thing happened to his movie.
Oh, no.
And basically they went back and forth on Twitter, and they came up with nothing. There's really no solution to it. HBO apparently doesn't really care. They actually have a history of this with their series The Wire. When they went to remaster it, because it was originally not shot in HD format, they went to remaster it. They did that in the wrong format, and The Wire creator David Simon had to call them out on it. So apparently HBO just has this history of not really caring about the quality of what they're showing for some reason.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, and if you've ever seen a film that is in widescreen, like the 2:3:5 aspect ratio, you never usually see that on HBO. It's always somehow cropped into that 1:8:5 or the whatever the widescreen television format is nowadays. But it seems like what's his name? The director of Keanu says that, like, from now on, in his agreements to direct films, he puts it as a stipulation that he needs to decide what version of the film is displayed on television, which is...
No, totally. I mean, like, especially like for a movie like Kong Skull Island 2, that movie is not meant to be seen in any way outside of what the director intends it to be, because the gorgeous cinematography and how it was shot, that's what you should be, getting when you're paying for a service like that.
And Ben, you recently flew on airlines and encountered some of these edits for yourself on an airline.
I mean, yeah, I'm echoing what you guys are saying. It's really ridiculous for HBO to be like, they have access to the correct versions, one would assume. It seems like that's something they could easily get from the studio. I don't understand why they're like taking a hard line stance on, like, well, it doesn't matter because it's on TV. Like, that's such an outdated mindset to have, especially where, we're in an era where the past, 10 years, people have been talking about how the lines between television and movies have been blurring because of the great quality of, how
television.
good TV, how
we have like
TV
4K
has gotten and
everything now. It's sort of ridiculous to overlook something like that.
Yeah, and to purposefully show a worse cut of something just is baffling to me.
Yeah, it seems to me that they just don't want to have those letterbox bars on their channel because, probably mom and dad do not understand that. But I think nowadays most people do understand, the aspect ratios of movies and film, right? So I don't know. We'll have to see if HBO does anything about this. They have long been this has been a long problem. This isn't something just new. It's just filmmakers are now speaking out about it. Moving on, we've been talking a lot about Universal Monsters Dark Universe franchise, which kind of crashed and burned. Guillermo del Toro is doing press for his new film, The Shape of Water, which, by the way, I saw last night and is amazing. Have you seen it?
Not yet. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's great. You should check it out.
Yes.
But Del Toro's doing press for that, and he says he regrets turning down running the Universal Monsters Dark Universe. Chris, what do we know?
Right. So this is depressing information because Del Toro would have been perfect to handle, the reboot of the Universal Monsters. But yes, he said in 2007, back before there really was what we now know of as the Dark Universe, quote unquote, Universal came to him and gave him the option to really pick and choose what he wanted to do, just relaunch the entire Monsters brand. And he turned them down. He doesn't really say why he turned them down, but he just turned them down. And he says it's one of his biggest regrets of his career. And it's one of my biggest regrets, too, now that I know it, because as everyone knows by now, the Dark Universe, as we know it, is pretty much dead because it got off on the very wrong foot.
Multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's at the same time, it's also interesting because The Shape of Water is sort of like a Creature from the Black Lagoon remake,
right?
Almost. So he sort of had his cake and ate it too, in a way. But I wish he was able to relaunch the Monsters as well.
It seems like he goes into these IPs like Haunted Mansion and sort of Universal Monsters, and then ends up sort of creating like his own thing that later become things like Crimson Peak and Shape of Water. So it's like really sad because you do want to see him, helm these movies, but he gets, like you said, he gets his cake and eats it too.
Yeah. It's just a shame that with him, he gets attached to 20 projects and makes one of them. And there's so many he's just such a great filmmaker, and you want to see, it would have been great to see him in charge of the Universal Monsters universe, although that would also mean that he wouldn't make other films for the foreseeable future. So it's that Rian Johnson Star Wars scenario again.
Right.
But moving on, we last week.
Oh, actually, really quick.
Yep.
Was going to mention with Universal sort of like obviously abandoning their Dark Universe. I wouldn't be surprised if they handed it over to Blumhouse. Since they're working so well together.
Yeah, they're supposed to be teaming with Blumhouse on some monster films, but I'm not sure how that's going to work out because, they usually do the lower budget stuff. Yeah,
well, I think for these stories, they don't necessarily have to be told in like that big blockbustery take that obviously hasn't worked because you just really have to stick to being true to the core of the story, but also still updating it in a reimagining for today's movie audience.
Yeah,
I think...
It really makes me wonder if they had approached The Mummy like that as kind of lower budget $30 million, contained film, if that would have been a lot more interesting. And I guess my head is telling me yes as I'm saying that. So.
Yeah, no, and I think maybe Universal's waiting for Blumhouse to release Halloween and see if an iconic horror icon could be, translatable to today's audience within a lower budget and, just go. They should just do it. They should just get James Wan and Jordan Peele.
Yes, they need to do everything.
Yes.
And last week we talked a bit about John Lasseter and allegations against him. Some of those allegations are now starting to see a light of day. Last week we mentioned something having to do with Rashida Jones and Toy Story 4. We have an update on that as well as these new allegations. Ben, what do we know?
Yeah, so in our original report, we had heard from, I think it was the Hollywood Reporter, that initially revealed that these allegations against Pixar Chief Creative Officer John Lasseter involved Rashida Jones, who's an actress and a writer. She and her writing partner, Will McCormick, were originally going to be working on Toy Story 4, and this original report said that they left the project because Lasseter made a, quote, unwanted advance towards Rashida Jones. Right after that came out, a few days later, Jones actually clarified and said, "We did not leave Pixar because of unwanted advances. That is untrue. We parted ways because of creative and, more importantly, philosophical differences. There's so much talent at Pixar, and we remain enormous fans of their films. However, it's a culture where women and people of color do not have an equal creative voice." So it seems like somebody got their wires crossed when it came to the Rashida Jones unwanted advances story. I'm not really sure where that came from, but she clarified, and there's a whole separate conversation to be had about the culture of Pixar at large, and sort of how that may or may not be inclusive enough or whatever. But
actually, before you move on, and I'm not saying Rashida Jones is lying. I'm not accusing her of anything, but. I'm kind of wondering, this is something I've been thinking about since last week when we talked about this, was if you were an animator and lived in the United States and you wanted to animate feature films and something happened to you with John Lasseter, would you come out on record with your name? Because that literally means that you're probably not going to be hired again by Pixar or Disney, which represent probably 75% of the animation jobs in the United States. So if I'm not saying that like it wasn't hard for these women to come out against Harvey Weinstein, but you could still get jobs elsewhere in Hollywood. In this case, like if you come out and put your name on it, it's scary. It's very scary. I mean, it's scary either way, but Sabina, do you have any thoughts on this? Like, I wonder, like, is this why we're not seeing people put their name on record about John Lasseter?
I think it's just a very problematic situation in how accountability has been handled since the start of Hollywood, or really since the start of any, corporate, company. Every day we're finding out that, some old dude you probably admired has done some really shady stuff, and it sucks, but it kind of is great that we're in a time right now where we are taking these actions, because it seems that men in power oftentimes sort of easily revert to like base animal instincts and lose inhibitions in places where they feel like they have the most power, and with that, comes a sort of abuse that lets them sort of, cross moral and ethical boundaries that we've established as a society. And it's sort of like now at a time that we have more people saying, hey, when this happens, these people who are the people who are doing these actions should be the ones who will no longer be asked to participate in society, who have to take a step back and stop taking opportunities from people in order to sort of become functioning members of society who are going to have to be the ones who live with the shame and not the victims anymore.
Oh, for sure. And Ben, you have some more to the story. Still no names on record coming out, but some sources that Deadline is quoting. What do we know?
Yes. Yeah, so Deadline has some pretty unsettling quotes from a woman who used to be an executive at Pixar, and she said, talking about Lasseter, he's very tactile in a weird way. He would rub my leg in a meeting. It was creepy and weird. It got to the point where I wouldn't sit next to him in a meeting because it undermined everything I said. So that was her quote, and then, so that's very sort of skin crawling.
Yeah, and the fairy thing.
Yeah. So two other sources say that Lasseter attended rap parties with a handler who was basically tasked with making sure that he didn't engage in any sort of inappropriate behavior with women. In 2010, he was seen passionately kissing a female subordinate at a party, and high-level discussions were had from Disney and Pixar employees about his behavior. So there's a lot of discussions about what Disney knew and when. And then there's this other thing about this Disney's Fairies, which is a spin-off series of movies, books, and products that are involving the Tinkerbell brand and stuff like that, where Lasseter was reportedly obsessed with the young character actresses who are portraying these fairies, and he went out drinking with them, and one Pixar employee had to become an escort, taking them around together and stuff. And it's bad news all the way around.
I mean, the way this sounds to me is Disney knows all about this. If they're sending an escort around with him to make sure things don't happen, then they are fearing things are going to happen. And I love Disney, and that is crushing to me. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
And we also have another firing.
Yes, yeah. And Andrew Kreisberg, who is the, I guess, a co-showrunner of The Flash and Supergirl. He was like a co-creator and executive producer on all of the CW superhero shows. He was suspended, I think it was 3 weeks ago, for sexual harassment allegations and stuff. Warner Brothers Television Group launched a full investigation, and now that investigation is complete, and they have fired him from the company, from all of those positions. So they're, released a statement saying, after a thorough investigation, Warner Brothers Television Group has terminated his employment effective immediately. We remain committed to providing a safe working environment for our employees and everyone involved in our productions. So that's where we stand right now. That's like, it seems like every day, every other day, one of these dominoes is falling, and that's just the one that fell today.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even just on like a wider global scale with the news, it's becoming increasingly harder for people to try to sweep things under the rug or hide it, because everything's just so visible now. Like the visibility is, you have like a footprint in every sort of technology that people could discover these things, and it's great because it lights a fire under the butts of all of these corporations to, change how they are making people be accountable. So it sucks because I'm also like a really big like Disney fan, but I hope that the company changes for the better, that if this keeps going on. Yeah,
it's unclear if John is going to come back to the company and after his 6-month sabbatical, or if if some of these allegations, if people actually are actually brave enough to come out on record and say these things publicly, if that will change things a bit. We'll have to see. We'll keep following this story. Another story we talked about last week or the week before was Disney was in talks to buy Fox. Those discussions had ceased, but now they are back up again. Chris, what do we know?
Right. So once thought dead, these rumors about Disney buying Fox seem to be back alive again, and apparently they're fast gaining steam, according to Deadline, saying that the plan now is for Disney to purchase the TV and film studio of Fox going forward, which would obviously be a big deal for Disney and would give them even more power in their increasingly powerful output. They're pretty much going to be a monopoly sooner or later, where they seem to own every piece of entertainment, for better or worse.
Oh yeah, and I mean that includes like IPs like Avatar and X-Men, which I mean with Avatar it's not that like big of a stretch because they already have like a lot of stakes with that, with having Pandora at Disney World and the relationship with James Cameron, who seems pretty down with it.
Yeah, I'm struggling because I'm a huge Disney fanatic, and I'd love to see the X-Men return to the Marvel Cinematic, or not return, but actually be incorporated into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Or the Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family.
Yes, but at the same time, I think less competition is bad for everybody involved.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But let's move on from this to our feature presentation, which is talking about this Avengers Infinity War trailer, which came out at like 3 a.m. this morning or whatever. Whatever it was way before I woke up. For this discussion, we're bringing on Slash Film writer Hoai-Tran Bui. How's it going, HD?
Hey, everyone. I'm good. I just spent 3 hours diving through an Avengers trailer, so I'm ready to talk even more about it.
Yes, we're going to get into all the geeky details. We're going to overanalyze this trailer. It's going to be fun. But before that, and by the way, if you do not want to get into those details or possible spoilers that we're like noticing in the trailer, not that we know any information beyond the trailer, please tune out now. This has been your warning. But okay, before we get into that, let's get into our general reactions. And Chris is going to join us for this, and then he's going to bow out because he has some stuff to do. But Chris, Why don't you start us off? Because I have a feeling that you are going to be the outsider on this one.
I don't want to. I feel bad. I don't want to rain on anyone's parade or be like a downer, but I don't know. I don't know if it's just my mood at the moment or I'm burned out on superhero movies after seeing Justice League so recently. But this trailer did very little for me. I mean, I like the MCU. I've liked most of their movies, and I appreciate that this is a big deal. It's what they've been building to. They're bringing all their characters together for this big film. But I don't know, something about this trailer just didn't do it for me. I don't know if it just seemed too busy. Maybe that's it, or just, I don't know. Like I said, maybe I'm just burned out on superheroes. But I wanted more. Like I feel like something like this should have a real big wow factor, and I didn't get that from watching it. But again, that's just me.
You know what it might be? It might be that now you tune in for a Captain America movie and it has half the Marvel roster in it already. Something like this doesn't seem as special, although it does seem cool to see, Guardians with Avengers and Doctor Strange, them in there with Doctor Strange. This trailer for me, I think epic is the word. It's big and, just, I don't know, exciting, but I guess, and I can already hear people criticizing me for what I'm about to say. I kind of miss that. I kind of miss the humor in this trailer. Like, it's kind of devoid of humor. And I know that all superhero films and all Marvel films don't have to be funny.
I thought what Thanos says was darkly humorous.
Well, yes, but yeah. So Sabina, what did you think of this trailer?
I can kind of see that it can be overly stimulating because you are getting all of these characters all at once, and they also cut the D23 Comic-Con clip of Thanos throwing a moon that a lot of people were like, that's not in there. But I'm excited that we're going to see all these characters. I'm a little nervous about it being overly bloated because there are just so many people in it. But from the looks of what we're seeing here, it's great to see like the best from like Earth and Wakanda and the galaxy, time and space just coming together to take on this threat that they're clearly not like ready to take on, because it is a dark trailer. It is a like, how are we gonna do this? Because they're just having all these things thrown at them that, I'm okay with it not being humorous because it's throwing some seriousness into the mix, which I kind of think the Marvel films have been lacking.
You know what it is? I think it's mostly just Avengers Age of Ultron, and the seriousness and the darkness of that movie kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm hoping that this doesn't do the same. Ben, what is your general reaction for this trailer?
I feel like I'm somewhere in between you guys and Chris. Like I certainly am not as burned out as Chris seems, but I'm also like not. I don't know. I feel like maybe it's just a good teaser, and there's not that much there that wow moment that Chris was talking about. I didn't really get that. Like the final shot of them sort of running in a line or whatever. Like we've seen that so many times from these movies. I understand they're probably holding a lot back, which is great because as somebody who, generally prefers to be surprised by big moments in the theater in that context, I love not seeing that stuff in the trailer. But just in terms of this trailer, as it exists right now, I'm sort of like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'm on board for this. I like these characters. I'm ready. Go for it. But I wasn't like blown away. If there was a reaction video of me watching this trailer, it would be like me sort of like raising an eyebrow, nodding my head, and that's it. I wouldn't be like screaming and running around in circles in my living room.
Ben, we should have
You're
recorded
not that teaser trailer.
Yeah, we should have recorded that reaction. That would have been good. But right now, I'm going to let Chris go. Chris, where can people find more of your work online?
I am at /film.com every day, and I'm on Twitter at Evangelista413.
Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Thank you.
Bye, Chris.
Bye.
Okay, so let's dive into the geeky details and let's talk about some of what we saw in this trailer. I think probably the most notable is the new looks for these Avengers. Everyone, Black Widow has a bleached blonde hair. Captain America has a beard. What do you guys think about the new looks?
I think it's really funny that both Peter Parker and Hulk have Iron Man armor because it makes Tony Stark the Iron Man armor Oprah.
You get an Iron Man armor. You get an Iron Man armor.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's one of our readers pointed out. There's a scene in here where they are in, I think, the Sanctum, and you can see in Tony Stark's hand, he has the flip phone that Captain America gave him at the end of Civil War, which is, an interesting detail that I think I definitely missed the first few times I watched the trailer. So that's obviously when, shit is going down and he has to call his friends, to help him.
His super friends.
Yeah. What else did you guys notice in this trailer that was cool?
Actually, before we do that, what did HT think about the trailer overall?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We didn't do.
Yes, HT, what did you think about the trailer?
Well, right now I'm kind of in a daze because I just examined every frame of the trailer for 3 hours just now. But I really liked it when I first saw it. I was watching it GMA to make sure that I caught it when it got online. And I was excited, especially during the last sort of hero shot when you see Cap, Bucky, and Hulk and Black Panther and Black Widow all together. And I was like, that's a really cool shot. It reminded me of, the first hero shot that we saw in 2012's Avengers and then again in Age of Ultron. But I will say that I was very overwhelmed by Thanos' look. That was the part that really didn't jibe with me just because he looked so underwhelming and just kind of like a purple larger Josh Brolin. And I was like, okay, well, at least, they're trying to maintain his facial structure and not turn him into like some CGI mess. But he didn't strike me as a very intimidating big bad. And I think that's where I think the trailer lost me because I really enjoyed seeing all the characters that I loved and seen for the past 10 years unite or reunite rather. But yeah, the big bad, which I think is the big sort of selling point of this trailer. I think that's why Chris kind of didn't really connect with it. I think that's the part that is really lacking something.
That's interesting because I was thinking the exact opposite. I
Really?
thought I was like, and maybe it has something to do with just how terrible Steppenwolf looked in Justice League.
Oh my gosh, that was so bad.
Like the idea of being able to recognize a human being underneath a villain is a very basic thing, but just seeing it done to this degree, I was like, oh, there's Josh Brolin. He's playing this character. This is a real character instead of just a bunch of pixels. So I was actually excited, and he does look a little goofy. He's bald, and if he doesn't have his like whatever gauntlet and helmet on, he looks a little goofy. But there are moments in this where he like choke slams Spider-Man, and there are moments where I was like, holy crap, like this is he's not messing around. So I was sort of like surprised with Thanos, who has basically just been like sitting around in the MCU
in a fancy chair. I kind of see how audiences have lost trust in CG villains. I mean, we haven't really had any successful ones, and it's a little bit of a bummer though that one of the more successful CG characters that have been in a film recently is I believe his name was Hoai-Tran in Warcraft. When I watched Warcraft, that character was the most endearing, and I was with that character's arc, partly because of Toby Kebbell's performance, but how it rang through the CG and how Weta did an excellent job. So I'm hoping that, the same thing happens with Thanos, where the care is taken to flesh out a character and not so much just like a video game boss villain like in Justice League.
Yeah, I did enjoy the design of the one Black Order henchman that we saw, Midnight Proxima. She looked very cool, but for me, I don't know, Thanos I just didn't really connect with. I'm not interested in the character, I guess.
And you mentioned the Black Order. A lot of people listening might not know who the Black Order are. Can someone recap? Who are the Black Order?
So the Black Order are 4 of Thanos' henchmen. They're his sort of children, like we saw with Nebula and Gamora.
Gamora.
Yes, Gamora only. So they except they left his sort of family, I guess you would say. But they're 4 of Thanos' henchmen, and they serve as sort of the onbringers of his apocalyptic war. And we only saw one Black Order henchman in this one, and that's Midnight Proxima, or Proxima Midnight. Sorry, I'm confusing myself. Yes, Midnight Proxima. And
the other one sounds like an anime character.
Yes. She's the lone female henchman.
Who I hope is played by Catherine Winnick, by the way. I'm just like, come on, give us some Catherine Winnick.
Is she cast in this movie?
No. I'm saying I'm hoping it's someone like Catherine Winnick.
That would be amazing. But yeah, she's seen fighting Captain America and I think Scarlet Witch as well. So she looks very menacing, and the other ones appear as well with Vision later on in the trailer. So they strike quite a terrifying figures in this trailer so far.
Yeah, another thing we see is this whole army of bad guys. Who are they, HT?
So those are called the Outriders. So they're a race of alien beings which are genetically engineered to serve the purposes of whatever master they are. They were first introduced in the Infinity comic crossover arc in 2013, so they're fairly new sort of characters in the Marvel canon. But here we see them as sort of like the disposable soldiers that every Avengers and Marvel movie requires. But they do look really impressive, I will say.
Yeah, they're just like the Chitauri in the original
the Chitauri,
Avengers.
Yeah.
Or the Ultron, whatever, in Age of Ultron.
Robots. Yeah. But they're really large. They have 4 arms. They have like beak-like jaws. So they do look. I like the design of them a lot. I think more so than the Chitauri and the robots. They have, I think, more of a distinctive style. So we'll see. They'll probably just be more fodder for the big battle scene, which we see happening in the trailer, which is this whole army of Outriders attacking Wakanda.
Yeah, no, it seems like they are aiding like Midnight Approximate on that battle. I think my co-host Sean Gerber on Superhero News pointed out that they're pulling from a lot of Marvel past and present like runs that are related to this storyline. So it'll be interesting to see like what's going to happen there. And I think that for the Wakanda battle, it has to be something big like chasing after one of the stones, maybe the Soul Stone.
Oh yeah, we should talk about that because that was a theory I've had for the longest time. It is because we don't know where we know where all of the other Infinity Stones are, and we don't know where the Soul Stone is. And I have been theorizing for the longest time that the Soul Stone is on Wakanda, and that is why Wakanda possesses such advanced technology, not just with vibranium, but that maybe they are harnessing the power of that Soul Stone, and maybe that's why this battle is taking place in this on this part of the world.
Yeah, no, rightly so. And even with Black Panther being the film right before Infinity War, sort of like maybe will help set that up.
Now,
I like that theory a lot, and I think the trailer confirms that as well, because Thanos seems to target Wakanda.
Now, we haven't seen Black Panther yet. I'm excited for Black Panther, but I'm a little bit disappointed in this revealing in this trailer that kind of like the big epic battle of this film seems to be on Wakanda. Like it seems like that. Like we've heard stories of that big epic scene that involves 20, 30 characters or something?
Over 30 Marvel characters.
Yeah, and Wakanda, maybe it's because I haven't seen Wakanda on the big screen yet. It just seems like kind of a disappointing place to have that. Does anybody disagree with me?
It might just even be in the beginning, honestly, because we've seen, spoiler alert, in Thor Ragnarok, it ends with Asgard on this vessel, and obviously getting that party crashed. And in the trailer we saw Loki surrounded by bodies, which might be Asgardians,
And by the way,
go ahead.
I was going to say, Loki, obviously giving the cosmic cube to Thanos here, he has turned for the 100th time? We felt so good about him at the end of Thor Ragnarok. Ben, do we just have to give up all hope on Loki?
Oh, yeah. Of course, yeah. I mean, I think Thor even made a joke about it at a certain point in Ragnarok. There's just something in that. It's the scorpion and the frog thing all over again, right? Loki just can't help himself. So I think there is the possibility that maybe
I think it's part of his arc, honestly.
Well, yeah, and maybe maybe he pulls like a Darth Vader or something, and like, eventually helps the Avengers defeat Thanos when he realizes like the full destructive capabilities that he has, or something like that at the end of either this or maybe Avengers 4. But for now, I am not surprised in the least to see him pass the cosmic cube off to Thanos.
But if he does help them succeed at the end of this movie, are we supposed to feel good about that at this point? I feel like I'm done. I'm done with Loki. Loki, I'm done with you.
Yeah,
I think
that's
Tom
a challenge.
Hiddleston's done too.
Yeah, it's a challenge that the writers are going to have to do. And, that's something that Sabina was talking about in the beginning. Like, that's my biggest takeaway from all of this is like, wow, this looks like a lot. And this is a teaser trailer. So, like, the idea of this movie has always been a daunting one because of the sheer number of characters in it. And I'm the Russos are great at comedic ensembles, and pulling teams together and wrangling all of that stuff. But this is like leagues of magnitude or orders of magnitude bigger than anything that they've done before, even within the Marvel universe. So I'm really sort of a little skeptical that they're going to be able to pull off something that is coherent and interesting and compelling in the same way some of the smaller scale, like think about Avengers being a small scale movie in comparison to this. That's crazy.
Right.
Like how, but that's where we are now in this cinematic universe. So I hope that they can pull it off, but I'm not fully convinced yet.
I will say though, by watching this trailer, I think it's nice that you can divide the story by sort of 3 subplots or 3 areas of the movie, which is the cosmic, which is where Thor and the Guardians are, and I feel like they are going to be attacking or trying to stop Thanos from their side of space, and the Earth side, which is Wakanda and all the exiled Avengers, as well as Tony and this Doctor Strange, and they will eventually unite with the Avengers in Wakanda as well. So I think at least there's sort of a clear dividing line between where all the characters are, and it's not sort of a big mess of disarray.
Right.
For sure. I went on a rant earlier this week on a thing that turned out to not be true, but I think the sentiment holds true. And that was, there was this Vanity Fair cover story that showed Thor with both of his eyes, as you know, in Thor Ragnarok. He in the article seemed to suggest that he had both of his eyes in Infinity War, but as you know, in Thor Ragnarok,
Marvel's trolling.
Yes.
Marvel trolled us during Comic-Con in D23.
Yes, yeah. So at the end of Thor Ragnarok, Thor loses one of his eyes. In this footage, we see Thor with one eye and having the eye patch, and obviously, you mentioned the D23 footage. They CG'd out that eye prosthetic. But
better job than Superman's mustache.
Yes. Well, we don't have a high I guess we don't have a high definition version of that either. But my sentiment in that piece, even though it was wrong, directed at this, Thor's eye, was that Marvel keeps on kind of, it's kind of like doing this episodic storytelling in that things don't matter. People come back from the dead, like, Phil Coulson or, Nick Fury, and, in this film, or in this, scene, we see Tony Stark with the arc reactor in his chest. It wasn't like the biggest plot line of Iron Man 3 that he actually decided to get that removed from himself. It just seems weird that like we kind of go in these they make
back and forth.
Yeah, they make these changes that do not seem to have a dramatic long-term effect. Do you guys have any opinion on that?
No, I totally agree. I kind of felt that way at the end of Thor Ragnarok because you had a lot of fun with that story and with, everyone saving Asgard, only for Asgard to possibly be, like, completely wiped out by Thanos for motivation in Infinity War. Like, I don't know how I feel about that possibly happening. And, it seems like they keep going back and forth with some of these themes that it doesn't feel earned.
For sure.
Yeah, For me, there are some things that, like you're talking about, like, if for example Thor would have somehow gotten his eye back, I would have been angry about that, I think, and like I would have felt betrayed a little bit. Or if like Phil Coulson comes back in the Marvel movies, like right now nobody really knows that he's alive. He's been relegated to TV, so they haven't really cheated too much on that one. For me, I feel like a lot of these decisions are being made on like a movie by movie basis. Which sort of feels like part of it, like these filmmakers are sort of like, playing with all of the tools that they have available to them. And, you have a limited number of things you can do in these movies. So the idea of, Tony taking the arc reactor out, that worked thematically in Iron Man 3 for the story that Shane Black was trying to tell. But maybe the Russos need him to, undergo some sort of different character transformation than he was than he was at the end of that movie. So maybe they bring it back for, I don't know. I guess maybe they bring it back for a reason, is what I'm saying. Or
maybe Tony dies and they need to bring back a Tony from the past.
Oh, wow. That just blew my mind. I was not expecting that at all.
Or Tony was a Skrull this entire time. Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen. We're going towards Secret War for sure at some point. But we should talk about other things that we noticed here. Spider-Man with the Spidey sense. That's something we didn't see in the Civil War
Finally.
Or Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yes. It's such an essential part of his character and his superpowers, and it was sad that we didn't see it in Homecoming at all, especially since that's his solo film. But I'm really happy with the effect that they have of literally raising the hair. It's very effective.
And
yeah, I was psyched about that too. And Kevin Feige said like Spider-Man has this power. Like when he was talking around the time that Homecoming came out, he was like, Spider-Man has this ability. We just haven't shown him doing it yet. I think he has it with or without the suit, is what he said. And how we explore it in a cinematic sense will change. So that they just sort of like put that on the back burner for the introduction of that character. But yeah, I'm like HT. I'm really excited to see that sort of take full center stage in this movie.
And, it used to be a joke that there'd be this giant light going into the sky, in every big blockbuster. That was like the cliche climactic thing. And now I feel like it's these portal things. Like
more sky portals.
Yeah. What is going on with these sky portals? And why do they look like they're from Age of Ultron?
Well, I guess technically, in the first Avengers, that was sort of semi-connected to Thanos as well. So it makes sense that we would return to that sort of trope in Thanos's big entrance. But yeah, it's kind of tired. I don't understand why it looks like Ultron's design, like the red and gray coloring. Maybe it's just the universal color for evil in Marvel. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's I guess just an easy way to bring in tons more aliens and tons of threats without
you have to get them on Earth somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it can't be a gigantic ship. Not that Thanos has a gigantic ship that we've seen him in. Okay. We should talk about Thanos and him encountering Infinity Stones. We see in this he has a glove that has at least 2 stones, one from the Power Stone, the orb from Guardians of the Galaxy, and the other being the Space Stone, the Cosmic Cube. We know that he obviously gets this Space Stone from Loki. We see that in this trailer. But how did he get the Power Stone from? Was that at Nova Corps? Is that where we last saw it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Xandar is dead, you guys. I'm so sad. I was like, John C. Reilly and his baby are dead. Why?
Oh no, now I'm really sad. I didn't even think about that. I was like, oh yeah, Nova Corps, and then John C. Reilly, no.
Yeah.
Well, the Nova Corps, I'm sure, served as like a guard between the galactic threats and other terrains like Earth that has to have been wiped out in order for him to even get close to Earth, honestly.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to have to see that in this film. And the third Infinity Stone he comes encounter with is obviously in Vision's head. What is going to happen to Vision? Is Vision going to die? We know that there's going to be some casualties in this movie. We've been promised that there will be long-term stakes. Is this the end of Vision?
I mean, when we see Thanos' glove, we only see those two stones. But it should be noted, we don't see the thumb. So there might be the Mind Stone, which is the stone in Vision's head, embedded in the thumb. But we do see the Black Order attacking Vision and taking the stone. But maybe Vision gets saved. Maybe Vision, they get thwarted before Vision's Mind Stone can be taken out. But regardless, that is sort of the source of his life. So, but I want it to be.
I know. I keep trying to tell myself that, like, maybe when they take the stone out of his head, he just looks like Paul Bettany and is like more of a human without powers.
So, Peter, can I throw out a potential spoiler for I guess this movie and theoretically Avengers 4 as well? It's relatively low key.
What is the origin of the spoiler, Ben?
It involves the character of Vision. I'll say that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so in August, earlier this summer, Paul Bettany, who plays Vision, was quoted as saying, he was asked about what it was like to be a part of Avengers Infinity War. And he said, his quote was, "It felt like the biggest movie that I've ever made and will ever make, and we've still got to make the next one. It's fucking crazy." So that we wrote an article about this. Does that mean we've still got to make the next one? Does that mean that Vision himself survives? It's possible. And I liked what HT sort of speculated in her trailer breakdown, that maybe Scarlet Witch maybe we see that stone being pulled from Vision's forehead, but Scarlet Witch comes in and saves him or something, sort of like a reverse of what happened in Age of Ultron.
Right.
So just because we see that moment doesn't necessarily mean that Thanos gets that stone in this movie anyway. I
mean, that's a good question. Would they show this in the trailer if that was a big spoiler? And I don't think Disney would. But I somehow think that that Thanos is going to get Vision's stone. But even if he does, and even if Vision does die, that doesn't mean that we're not going to see Vision in Avengers 4, because, I've long theorized that this film is going to end with not the Avengers winning, but Thanos actually getting all the stones, and it's going to, it's going to drastically change this universe, and I think we're going to have alternate dimensions, ones that, where Vision still exists. I think it's going to be excuses to get me mad about the lack of long-term stakes in the Marvel.
People dying, people getting brought back to life. I don't know.
Maybe the Vision's love for Wanda will cause the glove to malfunction, and he'll come back to life, and they'll be together forever.
Yeah, she'll give him true love's kiss or something, and he'll wake up like Snow White. It'd be awesome.
Guys, this is the wrong Disney movie. But
I mean, going back to what you're saying about like the stakes and stuff, we have that clip in the film where it's Tony holding someone's hand, and like he's just like, what have I done, sort of someone's probably dying moment. Like, I hope, and it seems to be around in the scene where Peter Parker is. HT, I don't know, what was your speculation on that?
Oh, the scene where Tony is holding someone's hand?
Yeah.
I didn't know what to make of it. I'm assuming it would be Peter Parker, because Tony was the one who brought Peter into this whole sort of mess when he recruited him for Civil War. So it's possible that because he gave Peter this new suit and he enabled him to become a more powerful superhero, we see Peter being almost crushed by Thanos. So it could happen that Tony blames himself, but Spider-Man: Homecoming 2 is coming out, so I don't think anything dire will happen to Peter.
I feel like something
could be
like
Pepper
Tony.
Potts.
It looked like a dude hand.
I didn't look too detailed at it. But back to Vision for a second. If Vision does die in this movie, does that really what about Scarlet Witch? Like, I feel like, does anybody like Scarlet Witch? And
I like Scarlet Witch.
I like her.
Does she?
We just need to see more of her.
Isn't her whole plotline basically just the relationship with Vision? I feel like it's very Bechdel test kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels very thin, and I feel like once you remove Vision from that.
Yeah, I think she has sort of been defined by her relationships with other men in her life. So first it was Quicksilver, her brother, and then it was Vision, briefly sort of Steve Rogers and him trying to help her come into her own. But I think, that's something that she can be separated from that. She's a good enough character, and Elizabeth Olsen's a good enough actress that they can, propel her to something more than just a compliment to other people's characters.
No, yeah, totally. And like going back to like how some of these characters seem kind of relegated to those sort of roles, you have, Scarlet Witch potentially being like a good character in this film that is given more of a dynamic and complex role within what happens. And we also have, Gamora, who was like one of Thanos' favorite children, and I'd love to see her go up against one of the other children and show that, because we haven't seen enough of that in the Guardians movies, and for her to have been like this, like brought up to be this threat and not really see it in like her own movies has been really disappointing. And then we also have, on the Wakandan side of things, because everyone on there is basically a superhero. I feel like Black Panther's whole family, all of them are superheroes, and we could see more of Okoye and what she can do.
For sure. One thing that I think disappointed me with this trailer, and it's kind of worrying me about this film, is part of the excitement for me seeing Infinity War is getting to see the Guardians of the Galaxy alongside the Avengers. And it really seems like, at least from what we're being teased here, that they're kind of a small part of this, the cosmic storyline of this whole thing. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, that's the gist I got too. Like I said before, I feel like this movie's sort of divided between Earth and the cosmos, and I feel like the Guardians won't be able to unite or meet with the Avengers, at least in this film, or until the end, because it seems like they're pretty much separated alongside Thor for the majority of the movie. But we could be wrong. They could be keeping the footage from us, and we only saw the Guardians for a split second, really, so they might be saving that to tease for later.
And that also goes back to the original concept art that we saw for Infinity War, which had Rocket with the machine gun, like standing back to back or side by side with Thor. So that's been something that, they've been working on for a long time, obviously.
Yes. So any final thoughts on this trailer? I think we've talked, over 30 minutes on on a 3-minute trailer. Does anybody have any other observations?
Peter, you had something written down about the Hulkbuster suit. Do you think that's Bruce Banner in the Hulkbuster suit, or is that a typo?
There's a Lego set that kind of indicates that Bruce Banner is inside that Hulkbuster suit. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
And there's also, I read that in a comic book run, semi-spoiler alert, Midnight Approximate sort of punches Hulk back into Bruce Banner form, or does something to him. I don't know. I said punches, but that's just what it looked like to me in the trailer. But I think she does something to him to have him revert from Hulk to Bruce Banner. But I just hope it's like punching.
I'm just wondering why Bruce Banner would even need a Hulkbuster suit unless he, for some reason, doesn't. I mean, they're obviously with Thor Ragnarok playing with this idea of Bruce Banner doesn't want to be the Hulk and is kind of trying to abstain from being the Hulk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I guess that answers that question. If he doesn't want to transform, and the only way for him to, make any impact in a fight is to jump into one of Tony's suits, so that makes sense.
So I think that's all my thoughts on this, and it seems like we have run the gambit with you guys too, right?
Yeah. Shout out to Cap's beard.
Cap's beard. Oh my gosh. I think I'm kind of nervous. I mean, we have all these characters that we all love and hope we don't get shortchanged. But I'm mostly more excited for like the standalones like Black Panther and Captain Marvel. I want to go in with my expectations kind of like not too high for this, so I could be pleasantly surprised because it's the hype is real, So. Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, I think the trouble with these movies is that you have we have like 30 characters or something in the movie, probably like big characters, like 15 or something. Mm-hmm. And you each have to give them a story and some time on screen, so they each get like 10 minutes each, maybe less than that. And it's not much. And then also, it seems like the formula for these movies is kind of keeping them separate and then having them join up in the end, probably this Wakanda fight sequence. And it's kind of disappointing because I want to see them more together. And I know that, like, if you gave me more time with them together, it probably wouldn't be as worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
like one of the things I most want to see is seeing Star-Lord return back to Earth after not being there for 20-something years and have him react to everything in modern day. But I get the feeling we won't have something like that in Infinity War, which is so just jam-packed with action and events.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about Star-Lord returning to Earth. That would be a cool moment if it happens in this film, which we don't know. But yeah, okay. So I think that does it for Avengers: Infinity War. Sabina, where can we find more of your work online?
The best place to go for my work online is my Twitter at Sabina has no R. I am also a host on the Superhero News YouTube channel, so go ahead and subscribe to that. We did the trailer reaction, just, skimming the surface of the trailer this morning, like super early, which is crazy fun. And I also do filmmaking, and that is also going to be tweeted out in my Twitter.
HT, where can we find more of you?
You can find me at /film.com. I'm on Twitter at Hoai-Tran Bui, and I have a podcast, the Millennial Falcon Podcast, on iTunes.
Ben, it's your turn.
You can find me on /film.com as well, and you can find me on Twitter at Ben Pears.
You can find me at /film. You can find me at /film on Twitter. You can find all the articles we mentioned, including HT's tremendous breakdown of the trailer, which features more than we were able to talk about on this podcast on /film.com and in the show notes. You can subscribe to this podcast, /film Daily, published every weekday, on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps. Please go to iTunes, give us a rating, give us a review. We appreciate it. It helps us a lot. Spread the word, and we will see you tomorrow.